The Texas heat was a physical weight, pressing down on the scorched earth of the hill country. Even in late October, the sun glared off the white limestone of the Sterling Ranch, turning the sprawling estate into a blinding monument to excess. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my brother's life, but standing in the gravel parking lot, adjusting my collar, I felt like I was walking into a funeral. I am Lucas, 35, a structural engineer living a quiet life in Dallas. My world is built on math, load-bearing walls, and certainty. This world, my brother Cody's world, was built on smoke, mirrors, and charm. Cody, 30, was the family's golden boy. A land developer with a smile that could sell sand in a desert and a moral compass that pointed wherever the money was. Today, he was marrying Isabella Bella Sterling, the sole heiress to one of the largest independent oil fortunes in the state. To my parents, Frank and Martha, this wasn't just a wedding. It was a coronation. It was the payday they had been waiting for since Cody threw his first spiral in high school. I handed my keys to a valet who looked like he made more in tips than I did in salary, and stepped into the air-conditioned sanctuary of the main lodge. The lobby smelled of expensive leather, white roses, and old money. A string quartet played somewhere in the distance, the music floating over the heads of 300 guests clad in tuxedos and designer gowns. I scanned the room for a familiar face. I spotted my parents near the entrance to the grand ballroom. Frank was wearing a tuxedo that strained at the buttons, laughing too loudly at a joke made by a man in a 10-gallon hat. Martha was in a sequined navy gown, clutching a glass of champagne, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching her. I walked up to them. "Mom's Dad." Martha turned, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before reattaching itself. "Lucas, you made it." She didn't hug me. She patted my arm, her eyes already drifting back to the VIPs. "Doesn't Cody look handsome?" "He's inside with the senator." "He looks great," I lied. I hadn't seen him yet. "It's a nice venue." "Nice? It's the Sterling Ranch, Lucas," Frank scoffed, taking a swig of his drink. "This is the big leagues. Try not to look so gloomy. You're depressing the atmosphere." "Sorry." They turned back to their conversation, effectively dismissing me. I was used to it. I was the stable son. The one who didn't need attention, so I didn't get any. I remembered my college graduation, civil engineering, summa cum laude. They hadn't come. Cody had a preseason football scrim, and they couldn't miss his big year. I had eaten dinner alone at a diner that night. I walked toward the reception table to find my seat. The seating chart was a masterpiece of calligraphy framed in gold. I scanned the head table. Cody and Isabella. Frank and Martha. I scanned the family tables. Aunts, uncles, cousins. My name wasn't there. I frowned, running my finger down the list of friends, business associates, even the local politicians. Nothing. "Excuse me," I asked the wedding coordinator, a woman with a headset and a clipboard who looked on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "I'm Lucas, the groom's brother. I can't find my table." She stopped, flipping through her pages. "Lucas? Lucas?" "Yes." She gave me a tight, apologetic smile. "We had a last-minute rearrangement with the senator's security detail. You've been moved to the auxiliary section." "Auxiliary? It's just through those double doors. Table 42. I followed her gesture. The double doors led away from the crystal chandeliers and the dance floor. I walked through them and found myself in a narrow, carpeted hallway near the service entrance. There were 3 small folding tables pushed against the wall, right next to the swinging doors of the kitchen. The smell here wasn't roses, it was dish soap and reheating salmon. My table mates were the photographer's assistants and the band's sound tech. I sat down in the folding chair, the metal cold against my back. Through the glass pane of the double doors, I could see the ballroom. I saw the chandeliers sparkling. I saw Frank and Martha being escorted to the front row, beaming with pride. I saw Cody enter, flashing that $1 million smile, shaking hands, the prince of the hour. I sat in the hallway, staring at the water glass in front of me. I wasn't just a groomsman who got cut, I was an inconvenience. A prop that didn't fit the aesthetic. I watched them through the glass, my family, and felt a cold clarity settle in my chest. They didn't just overlook me. They actively hid me. I took a sip of water. It was warm. "Enjoy the show, Lucas," I whispered to myself. But as I watched Cody charm the room, I knew I couldn't just sit here and watch. I needed to look him in the eye before he said, "I do." I stood up, adjusting my jacket. I wasn't going to stay in the overflow section. Not today. The smell of reheating salmon faded as I pushed through the swinging doors, leaving the auxiliary section behind. I wasn't going back to that folding chair. I navigated the labyrinth of the lodge's back corridors, aiming for the groom's suite. I knew where it was. My parents had bragged that the Sterlings had given Cody the presidential lounge to get ready in. I didn't knock. I shoved the heavy mahogany door open. The room was a shrine to masculinity and money. Leather sofas, a humidor the size of a mini fridge, and mounted deer heads staring blankly from the walls. Cody stood by a wet bar, pouring a dark amber liquid into a crystal glass. He wasn't nervous. He looked like a cat that had just swallowed a canary and found it delicious. "Lucas." Cody turned, flashing that winning smile that had charmed teachers, investors, and now the Sterling family. He raised his glass. "Come to wish me luck? Grab a glass. This is Pappy Van Winkle. Costs more than your car." "I came to tell you I'm leaving," I said, my voice flat. "And to ask why the hell I'm sitting next to the dishwasher." Cody chuckled, taking a slow sip. "Oh, come on. Don't be sensitive. Mom thought it would be better. You know, optics. We've got senators and oil tycoons out there. You're great, Luke, but you're not exactly decorative." "I'm your brother," I snapped, stepping closer. "Not a decoration." "You're the stable one," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "You can handle it. Today isn't about you. It's about the merger." "The marriage," I corrected. "It's called a marriage, Cody." Cody set the glass down, his expression shifting from playful to patronizing. He leaned against the bar, crossing his arms over his custom-tailored tuxedo. "Sure. Marriage. Merger. Potato. In Texas, when you marry a Sterling, it's an acquisition." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "Do you even love her?" Cody rolled his eyes. "Bella? She's fine. She's sweet. A little needy, maybe, but look at the portfolio, Lucas. Sterling Oil. Thousands of acres in the Permian Basin. Do you have any idea what kind of capital that gives me access to?" "She's a person, Cody. Not a venture capital fund." "She's a golden goose," he corrected, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He looked drunker than I initially thought, the arrogance stripping away his filter. "And the best part? Daddy Sterling thinks his prenup is ironclad. But my lawyer found a loophole the size of Texas in the mineral rights clause. Give it a year, maybe 18 months, and I'll have controlling interest in the new development sector. I won't just be the son-in-law, I'll be the king." I stared at him, disgusted. He wasn't just using her, he was planning a hostile takeover of her life. "You're pathetic," I said. "She looks at you like you hung the moon, and you're just waiting to cash out." Cody laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "That's why you're sitting by the kitchen, Lucas. You think small. You think love pays for the Pappy Van Winkle. It doesn't. Ambition does. I played the game. I won. You can go back to your little apartment and your load-bearing walls. I've got an empire to run." He turned back to the mirror to adjust his bow tie, dismissing me completely. "Now get out. You're bringing down the vibe." My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to shatter that perfect, veneers-capped smile. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. He was rotten to the core, and my parents had watered the soil that grew him. "I hope she sees through you," I said quietly. "She won't," Cody smirked at his reflection. I'm too good. I turned to storm out, disgusted, needing fresh air. But as I reached for the heavy mahogany door, I froze. I hadn't closed it all the way when I entered. It was cracked open about 2 inches. And standing in the hallway, pressed against the wall just out of Cody's line of sight, was a figure in white. It was Isabella. Her face was pale, stripped of all color. Her hand was clamped over her mouth, her knuckles white. Her eyes, usually warm and bright, were wide with a horror that chilled me to the bone. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring through the crack at the man adjusting his tie in the mirror, the man who had just called her a golden goose. She had heard everything. Cody whistled a country tune, oblivious. I looked at Bella. She slowly lowered her hand. The shock in her eyes hardened into something else. Something sharp. She put a thing. 10 minutes later, I wasn't in the parking lot. I was standing in the Sterling parlor, a private staging room lined with oil paintings of Isabella's ancestors. The room smelled of old leather and tension so thick it felt like humidity. Isabella stood by the fireplace, her back to the room. She hadn't said a word since summoning us. My parents, Frank and Martha, sat on a velvet sofa, looking annoyed at the interruption. Cody paced the rug, checking his Rolex. Bella, honey, Cody said, his voice dripping with that fake, polished charm. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. The senator is waiting. Can we do this family bonding thing later? Isabella turned. Her face was dry, composed, and terrifyingly cold. She didn't look at Cody. She looked at me. Lucas, she said softly, tell them what you told me in the hallway. Cody froze. He looked at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. He hadn't realized she was there. My mother scoffed. Oh Lord, what has Lucas done now? Did he complain about his seat again? No, I said, my voice steady. I looked at my parents, then at the brother I had spent a lifetime protecting. He didn't complain. He bragged. Lucas, don't, Cody warned, his eyes narrowing. He told me that this marriage isn't a partnership, I said, addressing Frank and Martha. He called Isabella Golden Goose. He told me his lawyer found a loophole in the prenup regarding the mineral rights. He plans to cash out in 18 months and take control of the development sector. Silence slammed into the room. Cody let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Wow. You are unbelievable, Lucas. You're really going to try and sabotage me right now? Because you're jealous? Because you're sitting by the kitchen? He turned to Isabella, putting on his best wounded puppy face. Bella, he's lying. He's always been jealous of me. He's making this up to ruin our day. He's right. Frank shouted, jumping to his feet. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You are a disgrace, Lucas. Trying to poison this girl's mind with lies? Get out. Get out before I call security. It's not a lie, I said calmly. You shut your mouth. Martha shrieked, clutching her pearls. Cody loves her. How dare you try to wreck this family's big break? Big break. The words hung in the air. Not happiness. Not future. Big break. Isabella stepped forward. His big break, she repeated, looking at Martha. Is that what I am to you? A winning lottery ticket. No, sweetie, no, Martha backpedaled, her smile twitching. Lucas is he's unstable. He's not successful like Cody, so he lashes out. Is that so? Isabella reached into the pocket of her dress. It had pockets, I noted absently, and pulled out her phone. Because after I heard Cody in the hallway, I made a phone call. To Travis. Cody's best man. Cody's face went pale. You called Travis? I told him I knew everything, Isabella said, her voice like ice. I told him the wedding was already off, and if he didn't want to be named as a co-conspirator in a fraud lawsuit, he needed to talk. She pressed play. Travis's voice, panic-stricken and tinny, echoed through the parlor. Look, Bella, I told him it was a bad idea. I told him messing with the mineral rights was risky, But he said the loophole was solid. He just wants the capital to start his own firm. He said he'd be out in 2 years, max. Please, don't sue me. Isabella hit stop. The room was deathly quiet. Cody looked like he had been punched in the gut. His charm, his confidence, his veneer, it all crumbled. Bella, wait, Cody stammered, stepping toward her. It's just business talk. Locker room talk. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Don't come near me, she whispered. Frank turned on me, his face purple with rage. You did this, he hissed, grabbing my arm. You traitor. You couldn't just keep your mouth shut. You had to ruin it. He was going to steal from her, Dad, I said, yanking my arm away. He was going to use her. Who cares? Frank shouted, the mask fully slipping. We were in. We were finally in. And you blew it because you couldn't stand to see your brother win. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother, who was looking at me with pure hatred. I didn't blow it, Dad, I said, feeling a strange, heavy peace settle over me. I fixed it. Isabella walked to the door. She didn't look back at Cody. She didn't look at my parents. She looked at me, gave a single, sharp nod, and opened the door. The guests are waiting, she said. It's time to make an announcement. The walk from the parlor to the grand ballroom was a blur of motion, but it felt like slow motion. Cody, realizing his entire life was collapsing in real time, shoved past Isabella and sprinted down the hallway. He burst through the double doors into the ballroom, his face flushed, his bow tie askew. I followed, stopping at the threshold. The room was a sea of expectant faces, 300 of Texas's wealthiest and most influential people, all turning to look at the groom who had just stumbled in like a man escaping a fire. Folks! Cody shouted, holding up his hands, his smile frantic and unhinged. Everyone just stay calm. We have a minor technical difficulty with the vows. Just a slight delay. The bar is open. Drink up. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. The string quartet stopped playing mid-measure. Then Isabella entered. She didn't walk, she glided, possessed by a cold, regal fury that sucked the oxygen out of the room. She ignored the aisle runner. She walked straight to the center of the dance floor, where Cody stood sweating under the crystal chandeliers. Bella, baby, Cody pleaded, his voice cracking, loud enough for the microphone stand nearby to pick up. Don't do this here. Think about the optics. Think about your father's reputation. Isabella reached out and took the microphone from the stand. The feedback whine pierced the room, silencing the murmurs instantly. She looked at her parents, Edward and Lillian Sterling, sitting in the front row. Edward looked confused, Lillian looked terrified. I'm sorry, Isabella said, her voice amplified, echoing off the high ceilings. But there will be no wedding. A collective gasp went through the room. A wine glass shattered somewhere in the back. Why? Someone shouted, maybe a drunk cousin, maybe a confused senator. Isabella turned to Cody. She looked at him with a pity so profound it looked like disgust. Because I learned today that I wasn't a bride, she said, her voice steady. I was an acquisition. She's lying. Cody screamed, lunging for the mic, but a large man in a dark suit, sterling security, stepped out from the shadows and blocked him. Cody bounced off the man's chest like a rubber ball. Cody Harper planned to use this marriage to exploit a loophole in our prenuptial agreement, Isabella continued, addressing the crowd as if she were reading a verdict. He intended to seize my family's mineral rights and cash out within 18 months. He called me a golden goose. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a bank account. The room erupted. In Texas, trying to steal a man's oil rights is a sin worse than murder. The shock on the faces of the guests turned instantly to outrage. I saw the senator shake his head and signal his detail to move. I saw business partners pulling out their phones. Cody looked around, his eyes wild. It's a lie. It's Lucas. My brother set me up. He's jealous. He's mentally unstable. He pointed at me, standing by the doors. Hundreds of heads turned my way. I didn't shrink. I didn't look down. I stood tall, meeting my brother's gaze. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The truth was written all over Cody's sweating, desperate face. Isabella looked at me, giving a barely perceptible nod, then turned back to Cody. She raised her left hand. The 3-carat diamond ring, a ring bought with sterling money, pretending to be Harper money, glittered under the lights. "You wanted the sterling fortune," she said. She slid the ring off her finger. "You get nothing." She didn't hand it to him. She threw it. The heavy platinum band hit the toe of Cody's cowboy boot with a sharp clack that sounded like a gavel striking a sounding block. "Security," Edward Sterling's voice boomed from the front row as he stood up, his face red with a father's rage. "Escort the Harpers off my property. Now." The security team moved in. They grabbed Cody by the arms. He was shouting, crying, begging Edward to listen to reason. My parents, Frank and Martha, were swept up in the removal. Martha was sobbing, clutching her purse, screaming, "We didn't know. We're innocent." Frank was red-faced, shouting at the guards. As they were dragged past me toward the exit, my father locked eyes with me. "You did this." Frank screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "You ruined us. You are dead to me, Lucas. Do you hear me? Dead." I watched them go. I watched the family I had spent 35 years trying to please, trying to impress, trying to save, being dragged out of high society in disgrace. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't pain. It wasn't regret. It was the feeling of a heavy chain finally snapping. I turned to the nearest security guard, a guy I had nodded to earlier. "I'll see myself out." He looked at me, then at the door where my screaming family had just vanished. He nodded respectfully. "Drive safe, son." I walked out into the Texas heat, leaving the air conditioning and the chaos behind. I loosened my tie, took a deep breath of the dusty air, and walked to my car. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one walking away. The silence in my Dallas apartment was usually heavy, filled with the echo of things I hadn't said. But a week after the wedding, the silence felt different. It felt clean. My phone, however, wouldn't stop screaming. I sat on my couch, a cup of black coffee in hand, watching the notifications stack up like a pile of dirty laundry. Voicemail from Mom, 10:14 a.m. "Lucas, pick up. The Sterlings are suing Cody for fraud. They're coming after the engagement ring, the gifts, everything. Your father is talking about selling the lake house to pay for a lawyer. This is your fault. You have to fix this. Call the Sterlings. Tell them you lied." Text from Dad, 10:45 a.m. "Don't bother coming home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You are a cancer to this family." Text from Cody, 11:02 a.m. "You jealous prick. You ruined my life." I stared at the screen. There was no remorse. No realization that they had tried to rob a woman blind. Just anger that I had turned on the lights and scattered the cockroaches. I didn't feel the familiar pang of guilt. I didn't feel the urge to drive down there, check the wiring, fix the roof, or bail them out. I tapped the screen. Block contact. I did it for Mom. Then Cody. The phone went quiet. I stood up and walked to the closet. Tucked in the back was a cardboard box I had dragged with me through 3 moves. It was labeled Home. Inside were the scraps of affection I had scavenged over the years, a photo of me and Cody fishing when we were 10, before he realized he was better than me, a birthday card signed by Mom, with a $20 bill she likely borrowed from Dad, a participation trophy from a science fair my parents didn't attend. I used to look at these things to remind myself I had a tribe. Now I looked at them and saw them for what they were, receipts. Receipts for a transaction where I paid in loyalty and they paid in indifference. I didn't burn them. That would be dramatic, and I was done with drama. I simply taped the box shut, carried it down the hall to the dumpster, and tossed it in. It landed with a hollow thud next to a bag of coffee grounds. Back upstairs, I sat at my laptop. For 5 years, I had banked my vacation days. I had skipped trips because Cody might need help moving, or Mom needs a ride to her surgery. I had lived my life in the waiting room of their crises. I opened a travel site. Grand Canyon North Rim Lodge. One guest. Check-in, tomorrow. I clicked book. An hour later, I was packing my truck. I threw a duffel bag in the passenger seat, the seat where I used to imagine a girlfriend sitting, or a friend, or a brother who actually liked me. It was empty, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt spacious. As I walked out of the apartment complex, I checked my mailbox one last time. There was a single thick envelope on creamy stationery. No return address, but the embossed S on the wax seal gave it away. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Books? Thank you for the truth. It saved me a lifetime of lies. Isabella. No check. No grand gesture. Just an acknowledgement that I existed and that my word mattered. It was more than I had received from my parents in 30 years. I tossed the note into the truck, a talisman for the road. I merged onto the highway, heading west. The Dallas skyline, a jagged row of glass and steel, faded in the rearview mirror. The Texas plains opened up before me, flat and endless, baking under the sun. For my entire life, they had called me the stable one. They meant it as an insult. I was the floorboards, the load-bearing wall, the thing you walked on to get to the chandelier. They thought stability meant staying put and holding them up. They were wrong. Stability means having a center of gravity that belongs to you. It means standing on your own 2 feet when the ground beneath you tries to shake you apart. I rolled down the window, letting the hot wind whip through the cab. I turned up the radio. I wasn't Lucas the brother, or Lucas the son, or Lucas the overflow guest. I was just Lucas. And the road ahead went on forever.